I walked into my parents' house on Christmas Eve holding a cake I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. making. My mom took one look at it, walked over to the dog's bed in the corner, and dropped the whole thing on the floor. "At least Max will enjoy it," she said. "That's my mom, Karen Webb. Remember that name." My name's Holly. I'm 29. I live in Rockford, Illinois, and until that night I still thought if I just tried hard enough, my parents would treat me like their daughter instead of their backup plan. I'd driven 40 minutes with that cake balanced on the passenger seatbelt buckled around the box like it mattered. 3 layers, candied orange peel. I'd piped the frosting 3 times because the first 2 tries looked sloppy. My dad didn't even look up from the couch. "Don't cause drama," he said. "Just leave it and go." No hello, no Merry Christmas, just that. I stood in the doorway with the cold still on my coat, and for one stupid second I thought, maybe tonight's different. Then my mom came out of the kitchen, glanced at the box like it was garbage somebody left on her porch, and carried it straight to the dog. Max didn't hesitate. Frosting first, tail thumping the wall while 3 hours of my life disappeared under his tongue. I didn't yell. I didn't cry, not in front of them. I said, "Okay," and walked back out into the cold without zipping my coat, because at least the cold was honest. Here's what you need to understand about my family. 2 years ago, my dad's pension got cut and they started falling behind on the mortgage. My mom called me trying, actually crying, and said, "We just need a little help, honey, just until we're back on our feet." So I did what any decent daughter would do. I opened a joint account. Simple, structured, so I could send money fast when they needed it. They put money in for 4 months, then they stopped. There was always a reason: a car repair, a dental bill, a water heater that died in January. I believed every single one. For 2 years, I was the one covering the mortgage, the insurance, the property taxes, quiet deposits, month after month, while they told everyone else how hard they were struggling. That night, sitting in my car outside their house, dog hair and frosting still on my mind, I opened my banking app out of habit, just to check. $23,700. Sitting there, untouched by them in months. My money, my deposits, my name on the account right next to theirs. I sat there staring at that number for a long time, waiting to feel guilty about what I already knew I was about to do. I didn't feel guilty. I felt something colder, steadier. I clicked transfer. Every cent moved into an account with only my name on it. Then I closed the joint one for good. I set my phone face down on the passenger seat and drove home in silence, past the Christmas lights, past the house where my cake was probably still being licked off the carpet. I didn't know it yet, but by morning I'd be the villain of this story, according to them. My phone was already lighting up before I even took my coat off. 8 missed calls from my mom, 5 from my dad, and 1 text sitting on top of all of them, sent at 6:42 a.m. that made my stomach drop straight to the floor. "I'm calling the police. You robbed your own parents." I stared at that text for a long time before I could make myself move. "I'm calling the police. You robbed your own parents." I read it twice, then a third time, like the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. My dad, Gary Webb, a man who hadn't said "I love you" to me since I was maybe 12 years old, was threatening to file a police report over money I'd earned, deposited, and moved out of an account with my own name on it. I didn't call him back. I made coffee instead, hands shaking just enough that I spilled grounds across the counter. My mom's texts came in waves after that, not questions, accusations dressed up as concern. "Call us now. This is serious, Holly. You've embarrassed this family." Then, 20 minutes later, the one that actually landed. I'm ashamed to call you my daughter. You always ruin everything. You were born dramatic. Born dramatic, like it was a birth defect. Like I'd come out of the womb pre-programmed to be a problem child, instead of, say, the one who'd been quietly covering their mortgage for 2 years while they told the rest of the family they were barely scraping by. That was the moment something clicked for me. This wasn't new. This was just the newest chapter in a story they'd been writing about me my whole life, and everyone around them had been reading along without ever questioning it. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a different name, Denise, my older sister, the fixer, the one who'd spent 30 years translating our parents' cruelty into something softer, easier for everyone to swallow. "We need to talk. Call me." I didn't call. I texted back, "Come over tonight if you want. We'll talk then." She showed up just after dark, cheeks red from the cold, hair thrown up in a knot like she'd left the house in a hurry. She wasn't alone. My brother Tyler was with her, and he didn't even say hi, didn't take his coat off, jaw tight, eyes already lit up with the kind of anger that comes from only hearing one side of the story. "You stole their money," he said. That was his hello. I let it sit in the air for a second. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice level. "Sit down," I said. "Both of you." Denise sank onto the couch, hesitant. Tyler stood with his arms crossed for a beat, before dropping into the armchair like he was bracing for a hit. I didn't argue with him. I went to the side table instead, pulled out a folder I'd put together that afternoon, and set it down on the coffee table between us. Bank statements, receipts, screenshots. Every bill I'd paid the last 2 years, laid out in black and white. The electric bill my mom forgot 3 separate times, the property tax notice that supposedly surprised them, the invoice from my dad's dentist that I'd covered without ever getting so much as a thank you text. I opened that account. I funded it. They put money in for 4 months. Every payment since then has been mine. Tyler scoffed. "They needed help, Holly. That doesn't give you the right to just drain it."
"It's not their right either," I said. "It's my money. And they fed my Christmas cake to the dog and told me not to cause drama before I'd even said a word." I slid the first statement toward Denise. "Look at it," I said. She hesitated, then started flipping through, brow tightening with every page. Transfers labeled mortgage, insurance, utilities. An old email printed out where my mom thanked me for handling the electric again and promised, in writing, that they'd pay me back soon. Tyler grabbed the folder next and went through it faster, more aggressively, like he was hunting for the page that would prove me wrong. He never found it. "Why didn't they tell us any of this?" Denise asked quietly. "Any of this?" I laughed once, no humor in it at all. "Because it's easier to tell everyone I'm dramatic than admit they've been living off their daughter for 2 years. Tyler rubbed a hand over his face. "I'm going to talk to them," he said, standing up fast. "No," I said, sharper than I meant to. "They'll twist it. They always do. They'll cry, they'll say I'm unstable, they'll make you feel guilty and grateful in the same sentence. You know exactly how this goes, Tyler." He shook his head anyway. "I need to hear their side." "There is no side where the numbers change," I said. "You saw the statements. The account is mine, the money is mine. The only thing they ever contributed was the password." Denise stayed. Tyler left, keys jangling too hard against the door on his way out. We sat on the couch with the lights off after that, just the city glow coming through the window and the cheap pre-lit tree I'd bought on clearance blinking in the corner. It looked more honest than anything in my parents' living room ever had. After a long stretch of silence, Denise finally spoke, voice small, like she hated the words even as she said them. "I always thought you were exaggerating," she whispered. She didn't say anything else. She didn't have to. It was all there in her face, the shock, the guilt, the slow, quiet horror of realizing she'd been standing on the wrong side of the line for years and never noticed. By the next afternoon, a group chat that hadn't been touched in months lit up out of nowhere. Tyler first. "We're all meeting tomorrow, 4 p.m., Denise's place." Then, a few seconds later, my mom. "About time, we need to stop pretending Holly's behavior is okay." I stared at that message for a long time, feeling the old, familiar pull to defend myself, to type out everything, to explain, to make them understand. I could already see how it would go. Every word I wrote would get twisted into more proof that I was unstable, that I was the problem. So I closed the app. I didn't type anything at all. Instead, I picked the folder back up off the coffee table and slid it into my bag. If they wanted a meeting, I'd give them one. But this time, I wasn't walking in empty-handed, and I had no idea yet that the account I'd found wasn't the only secret in that family.
I got to Denise's house 10 minutes early and just sat in my car across the street, gripping the wheel, not moving. I used to love this house. We drank iced tea on that porch in the summer, watched the neighbor kids race their bikes down the block. Now it felt like walking into a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided before I even parked. I grabbed the folder off the passenger seat and made myself walk to the door. Denise answered fast, like she'd been pacing. Sweater sleeves pushed up, hair in a messy bun, eyes nervous. "You good?" she whispered. "No," I said, "but let's do this." The kitchen table was set up like some kind of peace offering, teapot in the middle, mismatched mugs, a plate of store-bought cookies nobody was going to touch. The air in that room was tight. It wasn't a table for making up, it was a table for an autopsy. My mom and dad walked in together, like always. Mom had that bright, brittle smile on. Dad had his usual heavy silence, the kind he used specifically to make people feel small before he'd said a single word. No hugs, no "Merry Christmas, sorry about the cake," straight to business. Mom didn't even sit all the way down before she started. "You overreacted, Holly," she said, tight-lipped. "The cake thing was a misunderstanding, a joke. You're always so sensitive." Sensitive. Her favorite word for me since I was maybe 8 years old. She kept going, sliding into it like she'd rehearsed the whole thing in the car. "You've always been dramatic, easily offended. Things that don't bother anyone else set you off." Dad cut in next. "What you did with that account was criminal. You had no right. You put us in danger." Tyler leaned forward, arms crossed, the air getting even tighter. "Do you get how much of a mess you caused? The mortgage is due next week. They're panicking." I let them talk. I let them stack it all up, one accusation on top of another, until the momentum finally ran out, and all three of them were just sitting there staring at me. Disappointment, anger, and something like self-righteousness all mixed together on their faces. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, and set it in the middle of the table. "No speeches," I said. "Just look." Denise took it first. I watched her face change page by page. Dates, amounts, transfers, the email where Mom thanked me for handling the electric again, a screenshot where she'd asked to just front them a few more hundred, payment confirmations for dental work, property taxes, insurance. Denise's breath caught on the page showing the water heater repair, the one Mom had sworn, in writing, she'd pay back next payday. Tyler took it next. He flipped faster at first, but I watched the exact page where he slowed down, his jaw unclenched, just barely. Denise finally broke the silence. She looked straight at our mother. "Why didn't you put anything into this account?" Mom blinked like she hadn't expected to actually be questioned in her own daughter's living room. I don't remember. I thought it was for emergencies. Not a big deal. These are emergencies. Mortgage help, taxes, Dad's dental work. Why didn't you contribute anything? Mom's face went hard. I don't like your tone.
Tyler turned to Dad. Why'd you let her do all this by herself? Dad shrugged, actually shrugged, like we were talking about who forgot to take out the trash. She liked helping. Then, like it was obvious, if she was upset, she should have just said no. That was the moment something in me went quiet and cold at the same time. Not loud, not dramatic, ironic, considering, just a clean break. They weren't guilty. They weren't even embarrassed. They were entitled. Like everything I'd given them for 2 years wasn't help, it was owed. Like the real problem here wasn't what they'd done, it was that I'd finally stopped smiling through it. "We're not here to attack you," Mom said, voice suddenly soft, that manipulative kind of soft I knew too well. "We just want to move forward, but you need to stop making everything so emotional." If she said emotional one more time, I honestly didn't know if I was going to laugh or scream. I leaned back in my chair. "Do you know how humiliating it was?" I said, quiet. "You took the cake I made and fed it to the dog. You told me not to cause drama before I even opened my mouth. You've been using me for 2 years and calling it love." Mom rolled her eyes. "Stop being dramatic." There it was, again. I looked at Denise, really looked. She wasn't smoothing anything over this time. She wasn't defending anybody. She looked shaken, like she was standing in the middle of a puzzle that had been scrambled her whole life and was only now seeing the picture on the box. "Maybe," she said softly, "maybe we should try family therapy." Dad scoffed. Mom pressed her lips into a thin line. Tyler just stared at the table. I didn't say anything. I stood up, picked up my folder, and walked out. That night, sitting on my couch staring at a blank TV screen, my mom sent one last text. "You're still our daughter, but you need help. We're not the enemy." I didn't answer. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Is this Holly Webb?" a woman's voice asked, careful, professional. "This is First Rockford Bank Fraud Department. We're calling regarding a report filed against your account." "A fraud report," I repeated slowly. "Filed by who?" There was a pause on the line, papers shuffling. "By your father," she said, "Gary Webb." "He filed it yesterday morning," the woman on the phone said. "Claims an unauthorized transfer was made from a joint account in your name and his." I sat down on the edge of my bed, phone pressed hard against my ear. "I made that transfer myself," I said, "from my own account, with my own name on it." "Can you confirm that?" she asked. "Were you aware of the transfer in question?" "Yes," I said. "I did it." Another pause, keys clicking on her end, then in a tone that had gone from cautious to almost apologetic. "In that case, Ms. Webb, there's no fraud here. Your name is on the account and the transfer authorization. There's nothing further we need from you." I thanked her and hung up. Then I just sat there on the edge of my bed for a long time, phone still warm in my hand. 48 hours. That's how long it took my dad to sit across from me at Denise's table, say almost nothing, and then quietly try to have me arrested the next morning. That night, Denise sent me a message. No words, just a screenshot. A text my mom had sent to her and Tyler. "I don't know what's wrong with Holly anymore. She's always been unstable. She was never the smart one." I stared at it until it stopped stinging, which took a while. Then I opened my laptop and started a list. 2 columns. Everything I'd done for them on one side, everything they'd done for me on the other. The first column ran off the page, the second one had maybe 3 lines on it, and 2 of those were just birthday cards. I didn't cry over it, I just finally let myself see it without the excuses I'd been making for 2 years. Tyler called the next afternoon.
His name lighting up my screen made my stomach tighten, but I answered. "Can we meet?" he asked. His voice sounded different, tired, not angry, confused, like someone realizing the ground under him wasn't as solid as he thought. We met at a diner near his place, the kind with vinyl booths and coffee that's been sitting too long. He didn't waste time. "I went over everything again," he said, staring at his mug instead of me. "The statements, the messages." He stopped, jaw working. "I think I was too quick to jump on their side. They told me things that—" He didn't finish. Then he asked the question I wasn't ready for. "Do you still want to help them?" I blinked. "Help them?" "They're in trouble," he said. "The mortgage is behind. Dad might need surgery in the spring. If you walk away now, it's just going to get worse for them." There it was again, that quiet expectation shoved onto me like I owed them a rescue simply because I'd been the one rescuing them for 2 years straight. "Tyler," I said, "did they tell you they filed a fraud report against me?" He went still. A beat passed, then another. "No," he said, finally, barely above a whisper. "They didn't tell me that." I watched it land on his face like a slow-moving storm. "Jesus," he said. "I didn't know." "That's the point," I said. "I'm done chasing anyone, Tyler." He rubbed his temple, looking about 10 years older than he had a week ago. "I need time to think," he said. "Take it," I told him. Later that night, Denise showed up at my apartment with a folder of her own, a thick one, bulging at the sides, corners bent like she'd been carrying it around all day working up the nerve. "What is this?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She just opened it and spread everything across my coffee table. Screenshots, printed texts, old emails from our mom, words like knives, stacked one on top of the other. She's always dramatic. She's so stupid sometimes it scares me. She can't handle her own life. I pity whoever marries her. "That's all from this year," Denise said quietly, "mostly before the money stuff even started." I didn't cry looking at them. I think part of me had known for a long time. This was just the first time I was seeing the cruelty written out plainly, without me softening it in my head afterwards. "Why bring this now?" I asked. She looked at me, guilt and heartbreak all over her face. "Because I didn't understand, not really. I thought Mom just didn't know how to talk sometimes." Her voice cracked. "I didn't realize she actually meant it." After she left, I sat at my laptop for a long time. Then I opened the old family group chat, the one nobody had posted in for months, the one everyone still quietly checked anyway. I didn't write a rant. I didn't beg anyone to understand. I uploaded the screenshots, the bank statements, a clean 2-year timeline of every payment I'd made. I ended it with one line. "If you've heard things about me, compare them to this before you decide what to believe." Then I logged off. I woke up the next morning to 17 unread messages. Cousins, an aunt, people I barely talked to. "We had no idea. Thank you for speaking up. Your parents always acted different around us." Then one message that mattered more than the rest put together, from Tyler. 4 words. "They lied to me." A few hours later, he showed up at my door holding a single sheet of paper. "I need you to see this," he said, stepping inside before I'd even said hello properly. He handed it over, a printout of transactions from an account I didn't recognize. "What is this?" I asked. "Their second account," he said, "the one they never told anyone about." The numbers blurred for a second as I scanned down the page. Over $14,000 deposited in the last 10 months. Social Security, a small inheritance, money Tyler himself had sent them for the mortgage, money that never went to the mortgage at all. "They weren't drowning," he said, voice flat with disbelief. "They were hoarding it, while asking you for help, while crying about emergencies." We sat there in silence for a long time. Neither of us knew what to say to that. Finally, he said it, quiet, like it cost him something. "We've been backing the wrong people for years." Denise wanted one last meeting. "I think they're scared," she said. "They sounded softer on the phone." Softer, not sorry. With my parents, it was never sorry. Tyler didn't say much when I told him about it, just shrugged, tired. They miss what we gave them, not who we are. I went anyway, not because I had hope left. I didn't, not really, but because I needed to see the end of it with my own eyes instead of imagining it. Same kitchen table at Denise's, same soft lamplight, but the air was different this time, thin, stretched, like glass right before it cracks. Mom and Dad showed up on time for once. That alone told me they were scared. Mom looked thinner than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes. Dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. No tea this time, no cookies, just silence. Mom cleared her throat first. "We're sorry," she said, eyes flicking toward Dad like she'd checked she'd said the line right. "Things got out of hand. We didn't mean for it to go this far." Not one specific apology, not one sentence that actually named what they'd done, just fog. Dad leaned in. "We're family. We should move past this." Then came the real reason for the meeting. They needed help. Just a little, just enough to stop the foreclosure, just enough to catch up on the utilities. Mom clasped her hands together like she was praying. "We're still your parents," she said. "You should want to help us." I looked at both of them and said it plainly. "I know about the second account." The silence that followed was total. No denial, no excuse, just a flicker of irritation on my mom's face. Not guilt, irritation, like she was annoyed at getting caught. "What were you saving it for?" I asked. She didn't even hesitate. "Retirement," she said. "We deserve that." Deserve. The word just hung there. Then she leaned back and in the calmest voice I'd ever heard out of her, she said, "You were always the emotional one, Holly, always trying to prove something. That was your weakness." A beat. "You were always the stupid one." Denise didn't flinch. I saw her hand move, phone already recording in her lap. Not for revenge, just so somebody besides us would know this actually happened. Nobody hugged when it ended. Nobody said goodbye. It felt like watching something die. Not a person, something bigger than that. The story I'd carried my whole life about what family was supposed to feel like. I blocked all three of them the next morning. Phone, email, every way in. Not out of anger. The anger had already burned itself out days ago. I blocked them because I had nothing left to give, and for the first time, the silence wasn't a punishment, it was protection. Peace doesn't arrive clean, though. Walking away from people you raised you, even people like this, feels like pulling something out that's been in too long. Necessary, still ugly on the way out. Weeks passed. I kept waiting to miss them. I didn't. Then, out of nowhere, my cousin Samantha sent me a message. "This might be out of line, but I thought you should see this." A screenshot of a family group chat I never knew existed. My mom mid-conversation with relatives I barely spoke to. Holly's playing the victim again, always has been. It's honestly a relief to have her out of our lives. My dad had added his own line under it. "She thinks she's strong. Let's see how long that lasts." I read it once. I didn't cry. Something in me just settled, quiet and final. That night, I deleted every folder I'd kept. The statements, the screenshots, the voicemails. Not to forget, I just didn't need the proof anymore. Not for them, not for anyone. A few days later, I walked into a small bakery near my apartment, the kind with a handwritten chalkboard menu and real buttercream. "What's the occasion?" the woman behind the counter asked as she boxed up my order. "Just me," I said. Nobody mocked it this time. Nobody fed it to a dog. Nobody called it dramatic. It was just my cake, my table, my life. I finally understood I didn't want them to apologize, and I didn't want them to change. I just wanted the distance. and for the first time in 29 years, I finally had it.